How you doing, Sam?
Uh, I'm
It's good.
doing good, Professor.
It's good. It's good to see you.
Yeah, almost graduated.
Very exciting. Looking sharp there. Got the tie on, and how you doing, Sam?
I'm doing good, Professor.
It's good. It's good to see you.
Yeah, almost graduated.
Camera. So someone has to have the Star Wars reference.
Ah, I see that.
Has anybody been watching that Mandalorian? That's actually pretty good.
Yeah, it is pretty good.
If
I,
you'd like, I could put A New Hope as my video background. I have that set up ready to go. So no sound, but you can watch it in the background.
my daughter
long as-
piggybacks off my Netflix account, so I back off of her Disney account.
That's good. I was gonna say, as long as it's not the special edition. As long as Han shoots first, you can have it run.
I don't believe in the existence of the prequels, and the special edition are in the back. The prequels do not exist.
Christina, let's see, she should be joining now. So I see Malcolm and Charles. Let's see if Christina will come on. There she is. Yeah. I think that's everyone, Matt.
All right. Well, so we ready to start, or
I think so. It's streaming. We're live.
Okay.
So
sounds good. All right. Well, I will get going. Well, welcome everybody to the, hard to believe this, but it's the 9th annual Manko design competition. It's really exciting that this has been going on. I think it's become a part of our institution, and I think it's a fantastic testament to the great things that Manko's doing and their generosity and support. So to get started, I'm Matt Knox, and I'm head of the architecture department here at Kansas State University. I want to welcome everybody. Today, we're going to be looking at the work from our students in the 4th year of their 5-year Master of Architecture program. It's kind of more of our comprehensive studio in which they really take a deep dive into their projects and really begin to develop the ideas about how it's going to be built and all those great things that architecture entails. So welcome everybody, and I think we're going to have a great afternoon. So I'm going to give you a brief introduction to our distinguished jury, and then I'll turn it over to Professor Grant Alford, who's going to lead us into the student presentations and all that exciting stuff. So again, I thank our jury for being here, or virtually anyway. Unfortunately, they're not here. This is, again, through Manko's generosity, we usually have a fantastic tour of their plant facility and a great dinner with our jury and Gary Jones, and usually Steve Jones and Kevin Bainier of Manko, and really get to see what they're doing. So unfortunately, we're not doing that, but at least we can see each other virtually. So our first juror is Christina Yu, who's a principal and architect with the Office of McLean and Yu Architecture and Design in Albuquerque, New Mexico. She's also an associate professor, associate dean at the University of New Mexico. And she's also an affiliate professor at Dong, I'll mispronounce this, I apologize, Dong University in Seoul, Korea. Very exciting. Her expertise is educational facility environments. Her work in the office and in her team considers the beauty of architecture technical details, construction, and delivery as a collaborative and innovative process. So welcome, Christine. We're very excited to have you join us. Our next juror is Charles Di Piazza. We founded Charles Di Piazza Architecture in 2012. He has over 25 years of experience as a studio leader developing major projects with a range of public and private institutions. He's born in Casablanca, Morocco, and grew up in the French Riviera and studied at the University of Texas Austin School of Architecture. Life is very strange. Go from Morocco to UT Austin, which is a great story. And he's also worked before being in Austin, Peter Moreau in California, Norman Foster, and David Field in London before opening his firm in Austin, where he also teaches at UT Austin, which is exciting. His emphasis is on inventive use of building materials and the qualities of life and relationship of buildings to their context. So welcome, Charles. Glad you're here. And then our third juror is Malcolm Watkins, who's a familiar face for most of us, which is great to see him again. He's vice president with SJCF Architecture in Wichita, Kansas. He is one of our graduates, and we're excited that he's really been a great alumni, and his service back to the school has been fantastic. He's a member of our professional advisory board, and he's also very active in AIA. He's currently the president of AIA Kansas. He's doing a great job with them, and so he's also works with working with the Central States Young Architect as a regional director for that committee, which is exciting. And again, he's a very generous person and a great architect, and is really giving back to the profession and to our school. So thank you, Malcolm, and it's great to see you as part of this jury. So again, welcome everybody. What a great group. I really look forward to this. So with that, I will turn it over to Grant, and let's see some work.
Thanks, Matt. The students, everyone knows the order. So you have 30 minutes total. So probably around minute 14, I'll turn my camera on and give you a warning that you should probably be wrapping up your presentation part if you haven't. And then also about a minute before, about 29 minutes, I'll chime in and let everyone know we should be wrapping up. And please have your presentations ready to start sharing so we can get quickly from one project to the next. And at the end, I'll assign people to breakout rooms. The jury will be able to discuss, and I'll assign everyone else to a breakout room, and I'll just leave this stream up going for that 45 minutes, and then we'll come back to hear the announcement. So looks like we're doing good on time. Bo, are you ready?
Yep, I'm ready to go. I just need to get my screen shared here.
Okay, I'll let you know when I see it. I can see it.
Perfect, then I'll go ahead and get started.
Alrighty.
It's no secret that 2020 has been a struggle, and this became even more apparent as K-State announced its plans for shutting down the natatorium, the picture here on the right, leaving K-State swimming clubs, local swim clubs, and other recreational swimmers wondering where they would swim and compete, especially in the wintertime. Under this context, we were presented with the opportunity to design a new aquatic center for Manhattan, Kansas, a building that could serve Kansas State as well as the community, providing a new rec facility as well as continuing to provide Manhattan with a way to generate revenue through hosting swimming tournaments. Our client was the City of Manhattan Parks and Rec Department, and they worked with us throughout this project. What a more fitting way to begin an aquatic center presentation than discussing what we know about water. 71% of the Earth is covered in water, and in this age of climate change, rising water levels are at the forefront of many minds, as even a slight change in water elevation can result in devastating consequences. Water weaves its way through our Earth in rivers and streams. Even 60% of the human body is made of water. It is a force to be admired, a force to be feared, and a force to be respected, and it's in Manhattan, Kansas, in the form of the Manhattan Aquatic Center. Water maintains a natural fluid dance, whether that be in the ebbing and flowing of waves in the ocean or rivers carving their way through our land. To put it simply, water is a basic necessity of life and became our main inspiration in developing an aquatic center with playful curvilinear elements that wrap around a fluid building and a rhythmic symphony. To understand the site context and the location, let's zoom out over Manhattan, Kansas. The blue square represents our proposed site, currently a public parking lot in downtown Manhattan. Moving to this yellow highlighted section, this represents Pier Street, which is one of the main ways to enter Manhattan, Kansas, as it connects to Fort Riley Boulevard, which turns into Tuttle Creek Boulevard. And as Fort Riley Boulevard wraps around, it turns into Tuttle Creek Boulevard. And for many college students, coming from Pier Street into those two roads is the main way to get to campus, which is shown here in the purple. One of the reasons that we chose this site was because of its vicinity to Fort Riley Boulevard, as it's one of the busiest streets with the most traffic. This site was also chosen for its closeness to Points, a main strip in Manhattan, Kansas. That generates a lot of foot traffic and is a aspect of Manhattan, Kansas that brings in revenue, as well as its vicinity to the mall. In between these two objects, it provided a space that is being ready to be developed, as there is talk of redeveloping and redesigning the mall. And then zooming into the site, as I just discussed, it's just off Fort Riley Boulevard on that entry path towards the school. So we really wanted to create a beacon to welcome people into Manhattan, Kansas. It's also worth noting that this is zoned as C4, as a commercial district, meaning we didn't have to worry about on-site parking. However, it is worth noting that there is public parking south of the site, located here, and east of the site around the mall. And there is a lot of parking around the mall that is not utilized at all. In this context, it was important that the building push and pull off the surrounding streets to mimic the rhythmic nature of waves spilling onto a beach. This allowed for the building to establish a presence on the street, helping this area maintain its urban atmosphere, while also providing the opportunity in the spaces that the building retreats away from the street for us to develop the landscape. This can be seen most clearly in the northwest corner, as it was developed as a green outdoor space to give back to the surrounding community. Actually, I'll go back real quick. In terms of plants, I won't get too much into this, but we chose from a selection of 4 trees and a couple different types of grasses that work well in the Kansas environment and are low maintenance. As I've discussed, the building concept came from the appreciation of water. From here, the building design began the development of a 3-bar system, including a competition bar, a center spine that houses more back-of-house operations and administration, and a leisure pool bar. From here, the bars were pushed and pulled and raised and lowered to start to develop a language and a hierarchy for the project, celebrating the 2 outer pool bars, as well as maintaining that regulated center spine to keep the building grounded. In total, the building stretches to about 61,000 square feet with a total occupancy load of 2,600. And then moving forward to this east elevation, it starts to show the front approach to the building. And I'm aware that you guys have seen my construction documents, but just for clarification, the top and bottom drawing are the same. I simply included a bottom elevation without the screen, so that if there are questions about the detail or specifications of things that are behind the facade, that can be a little bit more clear. But that top elevation is what the building looks like. And speaking of the front approach, this is a great platform to dive into the floor plans off of, beginning with the large open space of the lobby that can hold up to 117 people. That expands from a lower heighted area when talking to the receptionist to a double or triple heighted space getting into the main area. This space also houses large curvilinear stairs that lead to a mezzanine so spectators can view the competition pool area. On top of this, the stairs also act as a bench and a waiting area for teams waiting to get into the competition pool, as well as people waiting to get picked up in the front drop-off location. Alongside the lobby, there is an administration area, as well as a multi-purpose room. It's important to note that these spaces have their own entrance. so that this section of the building can be sectioned off from the rest of the building, which is an especially beneficial feature when considering that the multi-purpose room can hold up to 124 people and its availability to be rented out and used by the community. So it can continue to generate revenue even when the rest of the building is locked up. And when talking with the Parks and Rec department, this was a feature of the building that was a big necessity for them, was the ability to section off different parts, and was part of the reason that we have 2 different drop-off locations. Moving forward with this center spine, we have the locker rooms, including a women's locker room, a men's locker room, and a universal locker room to accommodate a wide range of preferences and comfortability. Following the locker room, we have the bathrooms that hug the outer edge of this spine, along with 2 lifeguard stations, one for the competition pool area and one for the leisure pool area, each with their own restroom, changing area, lockers, and lounging area for the lifeguards. There is also a wet classroom that hugs the side of the leisure pool area that can afford the space. Up to 28 students and athletes can use this space. And finally, the spine affords the aquatic center ample storage for mechanical space for pool pumps and other pool supplies. And last but certainly not least, we have the competition pool, which is highlighted in green on the lower section, which has a 50-meter swimming pool that has 10 lanes and a diving well that's merged into one pool. And then on the top end, we have a leisure pool bar that has the more curvilinear leisure pool along with a 25-meter lap pool that can be used for laps, water aerobics, and more things of that nature. Moving into section 1, this further explains the relationship between the competition pool, the center spine where the locker rooms are housed, and the leisure pool. And we can start to see that hierarchy celebrating the competition pool and then the leisure pool, and then maintaining that center spine to keep the building grounded. Moving into the second floor, we can see how those curvilinear stairs of the lobby lead up to that mezzanine, as we discussed, which houses 385 seats for viewing the competition area. And then as we move into section 2, you can see the relationship between those the spectators area and the lower level of the competition pool. It's worth noting that there is seating on the lower level in the form of those aluminum retractable bleachers. However, that is more so for athletes and coaches who are waiting to compete or just taking a break. Spectators are more so for the top floor. And then on top of this, you can also see how we have merged that diving well into the Olympic-sized swimming pool. And then finally, we have a nice rendering of the interior of this competition space if you were to be a spectator viewing the 10-meter lap pool. And then moving over to the leisure pool, you can see the relationship between that lap pool and the leisure pool, as well as its relationship to the more administration area, which has the wet classroom, and then in this instance, the multi-purpose room. And then another rendering, but this one from the interior of the leisure pool, looking from the more curvilinear pool across to the 25-meter lap pool. And in moving back to the exterior elevations, you can see how we have highlighted the 2 different pool bars by wrapping them in that fluid aluminum sunscreen system. And then as we move around to the north elevation, you can see those 3 bars, how they kind of stack up. This view is looking with the leisure pool area the closest. And then again, on the west elevation, you can very clearly see the leisure pool, the center spine, and then the larger competition pool. And then as you've heard me mention the aluminum sunscreen system, we can get into the structure and components of it really quickly. This is a Type 4 building, which focuses on prefabricated parts, as can be seen by the glue-down columns, beams, and joist system, precast concrete slabs, and the prefabricated aluminum sunscreen system that sits on an aluminum substructure. And in taking one step further in the specifications, you can see how that glue-down system connects to a CLT roof system. And the idea here was that in using prefabricated parts, meaning parts are manufactured in factories or warehouses or constructed off-site and then shipped to on-site or trucked to on-site, which can speed up construction times and help with the efficiency of the build, which was a selling point when talking to the Parks and Rec department. Finally, this returns us to where our journey began. The beginning experience initiated as the sun bounces off the curvaceous aluminum sunscreen. However, this is not a building only to be appreciated during the day, but at nighttime as well. As the sun dips below the horizon, the building comes to life as LED panels set the building aglow. Thank you for your time all in this presentation on the concept board, and open it up to questions and comments.
Thank you, Bo. That was about, you have plenty of time, so about 18 minutes left, and or whenever the comments, y'all had enough time, just let me know.
Can you talk a little bit about your building type? How did you kind of get to type 4?
Yeah, let me go back to the, I guess I can leave it on this page. The idea with type 4 was we wanted to use I think we kind of had an affinity towards the glue lamb and kind of the warmth that could bring to the space. One of the initial concepts was kind of like a rib-like interior, and then how that could manifest itself through using the glue lamb column and beam system. And so we kind of went towards the type 4, which then kind of allowed us to go further into the idea of prefabricated parts. And so it kind of started to tie itself together.
With the size of this building, have you compared it to the allowable area for that building type?
I have the allowable area. I'm trying to look for I think it's listed on my construction documents.
Okay.
And with type 4, it gets you 60,000 square feet, and then doing the math in terms of the relationship to other buildings and the vicinity to the street, we were able to get an extra like 6,000 square feet. And so I think, I'm not looking at the numbers, but it is on the construction documents. I think that's around 67, 68,000. And this building's at about 61,000 square feet. So we were able to kind of stay within that zone.
Gotcha. Okay. Yeah, no, the building code's been a little bit behind related to glue lambs and CLTs. So there are some new allowances in the new building code, just FYI, that will allow it to be used in both type 2 and type 1 construction as well.
Okay, that's interesting.
So yeah, it gives you a lot more ability for larger size buildings.
Thank you both. Yeah. Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah. Can you highlight the kind of where your kind of mechanical space? Just I've done a number of pool facilities, so I'm just interested in kind of how you kind of work through kind of the placing of your of the pumps and all the filtering and everything. So I know there's kind of a number of highlighted spots during your slides.
Yeah. Do you want me to go back to that floor plan, or should I stay on this presentation?
Even if you could just kind of circle it here, or something would be fine.
Yeah. So when talking through the room for pool pumps for Olympic size swimming pool, I think we were looking at in between like 500 and 1,000 square feet. And so just making sure that the edge of that pool bar had enough square footage to contain the pool pumps, as well as space for the chemicals, which can kind of get stacked up on shelves. So it doesn't necessarily need a ton of square footage, but just making sure that there was enough square footage here along this edge, and then here, especially in the leisure pool area, which is going to need 2 separate pumps, but about the same size in relationship to the Olympic size swimming pool. So just making sure we were close to that square footage number, and then having that in each, along the side of each pool bar.
Okay.
A quick question for you, Bo. Thank you so much for your well-conceived presentation. I'm excited to be here with you guys. As it relates to the Manko competition, was there any sort of criteria in the way the window system and or other aspects of the building system or cladding could be incorporated, or this is a general question for anyone?
Could you explain that a little bit further? You're just saying like how, like with the Manko, are there any requirements that I needed to do for this competition?
Yeah, yourself or the entire, cohort of students.
I see.
Good question, Christina. And I'll just, as a rule across, there were no explicit requirements or specific systems or products or anything like that. So it was completely free in terms of enclosure and materiality and stuff. There may have been themes within each section, but nothing in terms of the competition in general.
Got it. And sort of related to that, then I would love to learn a little bit more about your materiality palette, your sensibility for the inclusion of multiple sort of structural systems, along with sort of a cladding system that's also yet a different type.
Yeah, if I could speak to that a little bit, the idea was to get a nice variety in building materials. To hit that 3 number was kind of the rule of thumb that I was going off of. So with aluminum, glulam, and then having concrete as the 3 main materials. And then if you want to throw glass in there, it could be added as a 4th one. But trying to not add too much to overwhelm the viewer, especially with a little bit more of there's a lot going on with the facade system. But having enough variety to keep the viewer interested and engaged in the project. And then in terms of the different structure types, because we have the kind of the glulam on the interior, as well as the aluminum curvilinear elements on the outside. The idea initially started with how can we make the interior of this space somewhat warm while using concrete. So kind of how that structure could mirror almost what the inside of lungs or like a rib cage would look like. And then building on top of that, how we can kind of extend a new experience on the exterior of the building with the aluminum facade, but then not having them be too separated. You can see here, that's the wrong cluster. Yeah, you can see here how the structure on the interior of the building regulates the grid of the aluminum facade system. So there starts to become this common language throughout, even though we are using some different systems throughout the building.
Great. I really appreciate your explanation. Was there an idea for how to daylight such a large open span space?
Yes. So the initial thought was not wanting direct sunlight in the swimming areas, especially for swimmers. It can be really annoying when you're swimming and you have these little dapples of light that are hitting you in the face from like direct sunlight coming through a sunscreen system. So making sure that these spaces only had like north and south sun could get in there, so there's not any direct rays. And so we looked into how we pulled the concrete walls around the edges far enough so that you're not getting any east or west light in there, and you're only getting kind of that ambient north and south light.
Hi, Bo.
Thank you.
I really enjoyed your presentation, especially I haven't had the chance to visit Manhattan yet. And so I appreciated your kind of urban analysis and your desire to make this building into an iconic monument. I think I wanted to piggyback on the gist of Christina's question because I had a similar reaction. As much as I appreciate your interest in providing different material, different textures, using a metal panel on the outside, CLT system, and concrete panels, I do feel that as a result of wanting to explore all of those 3 systems, there is a bit of a clash in how they come together. In that, for example, when I look at that perspective of the swimming pool, and I do appreciate the gesture of the beam, and it seems that the way it meets the post and the way we have an aluminum screen on the outside, that the two do not really communicate with one another. So I just felt, I was wondering if there is a way, for example, on the outside perspective of your building, to maybe use this wonderful idea of the screen, of the metal screen, which evokes the waves and creates movement and will create beautiful light inside. I'm wondering if the space between the precast concrete element and the screen could be manipulated more than you have done so that I think this interstitial space could maybe grow and do something that provides more variety and maybe even enclose the front building, which I think that there is an opportunity to maybe capture this front area as well as part of kind of your metal language, just so that you can unify the entire building. So my criticism is that I think your tripartite division early on was very helpful from a programmatic point of view, to set up the two pools and the more core area. But I'm curious if there would have been an opportunity to create maybe a stronger iconic image if you only relied on one skin that maybe encompasses different zones. That would, in my mind, help create a more iconic image for the building rather than try to contextualize it too much by breaking it down into different parts which have different finishes. Mm-hmm. But I think overall it's a very mature, very competent handling of a difficult program. I'm not familiar with pool design, so I really like the overall, the kind of organic footprint of your building.
Thank you, I appreciate that. And if I could speak really quickly to the screen system, I'll go back to this last rendering. The main reason I didn't encompass that front section of the metal screen was to reinforce the hierarchy of having the two pool, kind of like these ethereal pool boxes that like emit this light. And so it's celebrating these two pool bars and then having kind of that center spine to regulate them. So I was trying to just kind of re-speak the hierarchy and the language of the building through just celebrating the two pool spaces with just the screen, and then everything else kind of letting it just live without the screen.
Do you have a section through the wet? You mentioned a wet.
The wet classroom?
The wet classroom.
Yes, I can jump back to that. Yes, this is a section through the leisure pool, and then the leisure pool also has the wet classroom right next to it. So there's access to the wet classroom through the leisure pool area.
So, you have one element here, you have another element there, and then you have kind of a bigger element in the back. Mm-hmm. My invitation to you, Bo, is to consider if there is some amount of porosity between those two spaces, for example, like the same way that I'm critiquing your project from an urban point of view. Mm-hmm. I think this is such an important moment where you are in the classroom and you can kind of see inside of the pool. Mm-hmm. And yet in your rendering, the way I'm reading it is that this is just, is that a precast concrete wall separating two functions? Mm-hmm. And that's where I would invite you to kind of push and pull the program so that there is maybe more communication and you don't become as constrained by your systems, whether they are a structural system or materials. So it's kind of an invitation maybe to kind of loosen up a little bit in your hierarchy that you are.
Yeah, I think kind of piggybacking on that, I think you could still get your idea of having those kind of two pools be highlighted kind of in that rendering, even if you kind of took some of those metal elements, those kind of ribbons, and go ahead and wrap those over that concrete portion of that's less porous. That way it kind of blends together, but you still get that glow because you have the more transparent the glass behind it back there. I do like their selection of materials, though. I think that's going to hold up really well in a pool environment, which, it's super corrosive. So having something that's durable, you can see that from going inside the current pool and see what 50 years of chlorine does. So from that standpoint, I think it is a good selection, just kind of the total, kind of how you assemble that palette, I guess, is kind of what some of the things we're talking about.
Good points. Bo, if you wouldn't mind going back to a floor plan, I really appreciate both of my colleagues' comments on the qualities of durability and the qualities of durability through an urban sustainable sort of massing strategy. If you'll go back to a plan. I think what's kind of interesting is that I really appreciate sort of the edge condition that you've tried to maintain. But just like a city, and I'm sure my colleagues will have some comments about that as well, your larger sort of programmatic elements can also be conditioned like a block within a block. So to sort of really think about your green spaces, but then instead of just having this L shape be a byproduct, then really sort of subdivide those things as well to have new plazas develop that's more distinct as spatial qualities, that these things are much more conditioned rigidly to determine a sort of geometric order themselves as well, which would help to break us down what's served and servant spaces, and then even further breaking down maybe the separation between the servant to servant spaces, the hierarchy of those things. I find that a lot of projects, when it's so large, the energy is sustained for the first couple of elements, but then the other relationships start to break away and become sort of added into the corner. I would have loved to see the staircase be its own sort of geometric piece, an architectural piece, instead of being added onto elements, so that the section making then becomes identifying sort of and one of the colleagues mentioned it earlier, the interstitial spaces between the large elements and the secondary elements. And then the section can then have that distinct set of relationships versus a byproduct sort of feel in terms of the section. So just a couple of places that I think your sort of relationship to the spaces could be pushed a little bit further. And personally, it would be a wonderful idea to pick a material and structural system, then you can sort of manipulate to have a dialogue between the same types of materials in the next venture of spaces. It certainly allows for constructability to have a clarity of layers and those who are operating in the construction process. It allows it for it to go to bid in a kind of packaged sort of way, which is always, you know, a plus, but there's some really wonderful things happening here.
We just rounded under 1 minute left. Are there any final comments? Feel okay to wrap up?
Nice project.
Yeah, very
Thank
nice.
you guys so much.
Okay,
Very nice.
great, Bo. Thank you for going first. And Sam, are you ready?
Yes. So,
I'll let you know when I can see your screen pop up and start your timer. Alrighty.
okay, can you see my screen?
I am, were you gonna go full screen or?
Yeah,
Okay, yeah, it's up now. I'll start you off.
Okay.
Thanks.
awesome. Okay. I'm Somnath Mukherjee, and I am a postbac architecture student here. So here I'm going to present the renovation and extension proposal for Kansas City Call newspaper building, Kansas City, Missouri. A building which will be placed to showcase history of print media and connection to the Black community, and make Kansas City Call a building for the neighborhood and community to learn and socialize. So looking back into the history, we found how important Kansas City Call for the people in the neighborhood and Black community is. The founder of Call was Chester Arthur Franklin, and he remained its active head and guiding strength for 36 years. His vision was to develop a paper which gave voice to Black community, create unbiased news outlets, help and advertise Black businesses. He wrote against 1950s suburban development. It was also the first Black-owned newspaper to become international news service in 1948, and he urged Black citizens to register and vote. Other notable members were Lucy Harris Bulford, a leading journalist in the Call, and here we see the picture from 1935 showing all the staffs of the Call. So we were asked to include spaces which would help generate generations to remember call's history. Spaces like entry and reception, dialogue room, reading area, galleries, temporary and permanent, and back of the house spaces like storage, mechanical restrooms, and janitor's closet, which totals up to 6644 square feet. As a studio, we did background research to know who are we designing for, such as knowing the history of 18th and Vine neighborhood, the call, Kansas City Jazz, civil rights movement. We learned about different types of printing press and print media. We also came to know about important personalities in this field and researched about the neighborhood designing principles. So Kansas City, major hub for most of the things in this region. The call is located in the junction of East 18th Street and Woodland Avenue. The 18th and Vine districts houses many historical and prominent buildings, such as the Gem Theater, Jazz Museum, and other residential buildings, as you can see over here. So this is our proposed site for development, the corner plot between East 18th and Woodland Avenue. Next to it stands a 3-story Kansas City Call newspaper, which is not included in our project scope. Then Kansas City Call, if you see, then it was established in 1919 and went through major renovations in 1960s. The site, which was given to us, had a 2-story, which was later demolished. Then on the right, we can see the present condition of the call. We went for a site visit and it helped us to relate with the program and existing structure. As you can see, there is a wall mural on the east wall, very important. The center picture shows the existing warehouse and the last one shows the print shop in the mezzanine level. The structure above is exposed and it gives an industrial look. So my approach to this design was to respect and preserve history, focus on micro contexts like neighborhood structures, jazz museum, gem theater, as well as macro contexts like new buildings in Kansas City for a more modern approach. My focus was also to build a place which supports local culture and music. Pop culture and music is very popular in this neighborhood. Idea was also to get a design which is aesthetically pleasing, visually strong, and makes the user and the community proud. A building for all age groups, which is easily accessible, helps user to, and this also helps user to people to visually connect both internally and externally, utilize bright sunny days in Kansas City and use daylighting, and create facade which acts as a protection for events as well as wrap old and new structure. So examining about the site and its feature helped to guide the design. This diagram depicts the existing structure of Kansas City Call. This depicts the proposed addition. Spatial zoning was considered keeping in mind site factors with permanent and temporary galleries placed on the west, reception, dialogue, reading room on the east for better daylighting and visual connection, print shop placed at the back of the house, and for equipments and spaces for storage items like print related to printing. Building type A3 for the museum and B for the print shop. Second floor houses print shop, which acts like a studio space with computer and workstations, whereas there is an occupiable terrace for the events, functions, and public gathering. Circulation diagram shows entry from the north and east. It also shows the vertical and horizontal circulation toward the structure. Occupiable roof for events and public gathering, as I said, glazing to take daylight in, and a kinetic facade which changes with flowing wind and make the structure alive. So the site plan over here, which indicates the East 18th Street, Woodland Avenue, and the buildings next to the proposed site. So talking about the floor plan indicates the entry, temporary and permanent galleries to the west, print shop towards the south end. There is a second entry to support the print shop. If the user wants to come only for to get prints, they can use the second entry, whereas the main entry is also available on the East 18th Street. Then, whereas on the east, we have reception, dialogue room, reading room, and the restrooms. The second floor with a print shop and occupiable roof and movable seatings. This is the isometric view, which shows all components put together. The section cut shows all the east spaces on the east, reception, dialogue room, reading room, restrooms, vertical circulation. This section cut shows focuses on the existing wall mural, and my proposal was to keep the wall as a display itself. Then here you can see how circulation is working through the building, and print shop and the print studio in the first and second floor respectively, and how mechanical system is sandwiched between the new and the existing structure. Then talking about the structure, this is the existing structure with steel beam and roof joist, as you can see in the images when we went to the taken from the site visit. This is the proposed primary structure with 12 by 24 wide flange beam and 12 by 12 HHS columns. Roof joist supporting roof above. Then the structure would have centralized AHE unit with supply and distribution ducts to respective spaces and return duct as well. Rooftop ERB units to supply fresh air to the AHE unit below. This is the east wall section with the new wall structure, glazing, and how it comes together with the facade, the connective facade, and how the angles and all those things are working together to support the facade with steel cables and all those things. Then this section shows how the channel glass is sitting on top of the existing CMU wall on the rear side of the site, the south end, and the channel glass is having 2 layers with the air gap in between so that the winter doesn't cause any problem with vapor and all those things. Then talking about the 3D section, which depicts the layers of the concrete wall with closed cell spray, polyurethane foam, and then vapor barrier to ensure gap and fire-rated gypsum board inside. Then the roof, this section depicts the structure and the roof system with metal deck, concrete, insulation, sheeting, and the roof, the membranes. Then the pavers for the water runoff. Then sand blasted low E glazing on the top to hide components from outside, and clear glazing for daylight and visual connection. This section indicates the facade frame and joinery, how everything comes together and how it attaches with the primary structure. So as you can see over here, this is the view of the Kansas City Call from East 18th Street, and you can see the Woodland Avenue going towards the left, and how the structure and all the buildings are coming together with the neighborhood building. Then upon entry, we get a glimpse of the existing structure, and there is the primary and second primary permanent and temporary exhibition space showcasing the history of Kansas City Call, the struggle, and all those things. On the left, when we enter, we see the reception area with seating space, daylight coming in. On the backdrop, there is currently exhibited spaces. It's listed down. Whereas when you go forward, you see the dialogue room, which is the space for presenting, like for small crowds to gather in there. There is a projector, projection screen, and everything is there to for people to sit there, discuss, and talk about the history of the call. Then comes the reading room, which is also housed to the digital and kiosk and sitting area for personal reading area, as well as the group study with books and materials to know about the history of the call and to know about more about printing and all those things. On the back, as you can see, there are the restrooms, and on the other side, there is the area print shop next to that wall. This is the view for the permanent and temporary exhibition gallery. And as you can see over here, there is a visual connection to the print shop, the glass facade over there on the back next to the stairwell. Then this space is more like, I tried to keep this more like simple, and the exposed existing structure is acting as a display itself. And on top there is like circulation supply and supply ducts and all those things. And on top there is the proposed structure. This is the print shop. It's Macy's, as we know, that print shop with papers, inks, and everything's over there, like messy space. And this is more like a space for equipments, printers, plotters, desk to place prints to dry, and walls to tuck in and discuss about all those things, as we have as a setting where people can come in, see this space, print their stuffs, and can go out from the exit over there. When you take the stair or the elevator, you come to this space, which is the print studio. This is more like a clean space with diffused sunlight, workstations, diffused sunlight on one end and open terrace on the other, making it a perfect working environment. One of the most important features of this proposal was to connect neighborhood with the building and connect people with the building when they're like walking outside or driving. And rooftop events can take place, which will support local artists, local culture, and business owners. And these are movable seatings, and they can be arranged according to the need. Then here is the final exterior view of the hall, with the facade acting as a backdrop for the performers and the audience. The idea was to make this Kansas City call as a jewel for the 18th and Wine District. And here is my board summing up everything. Thank you.
Again, plenty of time, over 17 minutes left, so no rush at all. And Sam, feel free to, we asked everyone to put the board up, but feel free to cycle back through your drawings or ask Sam to call up any drawing you like.
Okay.
What a wonderful presentation, Sam. You need to be commended for the amount of graphic clarity in all aspects of your presentation. You have absolutely a wonderful hand over type of drawings. Would you mind going back to your final presentation board and sort of, I think there's some diagrams in there as well that I'd like to kind of start off with. There we go. So lovely project. It's obviously a small site, so in some ways it's much easier to control than a massive city block. In that way, it allowed you to go through a lot of things. But where my first question starts with the sensibility about your proposal for a kind of new kind of institution, right? Really calling attention to a historic site and building and an organization of people that were asking of our society some new ways of behavior and thinking. And when I go to the first set of diagrams here, I wonder if you had ever considered an opportunity to highlight and or make manifest different spatial conditions in the section, because we know the sides are somewhat bounded or bordered by the conditions.
Just like section wise, my main purpose was to take a space like the galleries and all those things, keeping on the west, where it is more like closed connected spaces and it's like free flowing and all those things. Whereas on the east, my idea was to keep where you have like public coming in, going out, reading room, library kind of feature, dialogue room and all those things. Those spaces are more on the east, which is facing the street. And section wise, yes, like visually, my main purpose was to visually connect everything and the existing structure to see like I'm placing those things as a display itself, the structure and the spaces itself.
I find for a small project to really bring prominence and attention to an organization that's obviously become an important fixture to the city, one has to sort of break the envelope a little bit. You know, we recognize it's a city corner and it has to play by city boundaries of rules, but in the section quality, I believe, just as you've sort of taken down the height for the restroom, I was expecting a sort of exuberant sort of punching up of the space that is the gallery, so that it really announces itself as an institution. So very minor issue, but for me, it speaks to then stacking more programs versus really trying to challenge this kind of importance of program to really think creatively about the space that we're making. But otherwise, I mean, lots of wonderful, lovely, coordinated decisions about room to room flow and a nice idea about a kind of wrapper.
Hello, Somnath. I thank you for your project. What I find interesting is, there are different ways to tack on to an existing building. How do you deal with preservation? And I think you went about it in a true and tried method where you want to contrast the new construction, against kind of the load-bearing masonry, shall we say. So you went with more of a lightweight and steel. Another way would have been to kind of more like mimic, use load-bearing construction throughout to kind of create a whole. And a third way would be kind of a hybrid between the two, where you would kind of mimic the existing masonry, but then there would be some more contemporary intervention. And to me, a good precedent for that third way would be the Noise Museum in Berlin by Chipperfield. I completely agree with what Christina said in how, even though your site is small, and in terms of the identity of the block, you don't have a lot of opportunity to expand. I would have liked to see more consideration in section, especially to me, the thing that I'm reacting to is how the exhibition gallery seems hemmed in. And I understand why it's hemmed in, because, putting the reading area, the dialogue as the public face of the street, that makes a lot of sense, but it makes the gallery too closed off. And I'm wondering if there would have been an opportunity at the intersection of the two buildings, between the gallery and that existing brick facade, to maybe create more of an opening, more of a kind of a skylight, because I think you have a very generous terrace, and I can see part of that terrace maybe being peeled back, manipulated in sections, so that you can really have a natural light that kind of is brought into your exhibition space. Which, right now, the only space where you are adding natural light is in your, the print shop, mechanical print studios, the way you handle it with this beautiful curtain wall. Now, my second statement is, how do you access the roof? It looks like you have to go inside the building to a conditioned space to go out. And it's such an important symbolic element. I'm wondering if there would be more, excuse me, of a connector from the street, like a more direct, viewable access from ground floor to the upper floor. And maybe that, again, I'm going to use that word, interstitial space between the existing and the new, this could have given way to maybe more like a vertical stair along a spine, for example. Maybe there would be a gesture of kind of a way to go from the ground floor to the upper floor that is very visible from the street. I think overall you have a lot of very good ideas, and it's a very respectful, well-behaved project, and I want to congratulate you on that, on not desiring to call too much attention to your intervention, but really playing with kind of the existing context. So very, very nice project.
Thank you. Thank you. Yeah, just to adding in the comment, like the exhibition space, which is placed on the west. So yeah, I agree with that sunlight like coming in and giving it a space. So my concept behind that was, as there is an existing structure with roof joist and that wooden structure, which is placed in 1919s. So keeping that intact and using that as a like exhibition as a material itself. So yeah, I thought of that, and yeah, like I get your point, what you said. Yeah.
It's a fine line because I
Right.
completely respect wanting to preserve the original materials. Like my experience when I remodel a building is that the materials that are being taken out are better quality than the material we put in. But I don't
Right.
want
Right.
but if we look at your ceiling, there's a lot of exposed ducts. There's a lot of lighting schemes which are arguably going to compromise existing fabric. So anyway, so something to think about.
For sure. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can you talk a little bit more about this wrapper and kind of this screen that you're adding around there? Can you kind of describe kind of the materiality of that?
Okay. So I will go back to the this thing. So this facade will generally be leaves, metal plates, which will be hanged with steel cables, and those steel cables are supported by L angles or brackets, which will be again attached to the primary structure over there. And when those leaves are also like hung on like a circular member over there attached to the wire, when the wind blows, they can easily move and create a different texture on the wall.
Okay. Can you go back to your board now?
Yeah.
So is it the same kind of porosity across the entire facade, or does it adjust in any way?
No, it is same.
Okay.
It's same.
Okay. Did you kind of explore kind of different opportunities maybe to address or to kind of correlate more with kind of those different types of spaces that are going on behind it?
Different type of spaces, as in like the main spaces is the terrace over there, which is the backdrop. The facade will act as a backdrop for the events, and it's a wrapping up with the heights of the nearby structure, the Kansas City Call, and the structure behind. And at the first floor, it will be act as a semi like shade for the events, for the dialogue room, for the reading room, and for the reception area.
Right. I guess my question is did you look at making it maybe more transparent or less transparent in response to the space that it's covering? So if it's supposed to be a backdrop for the stage at some portion for the terrace, then maybe that should be a little bit less transparent and provide a more solid backdrop. Mm-hmm. Vice versa, maybe for the lobby space or something like that. So maybe just kind of something else that maybe you consider is how it make sure it's responding to what's going on behind it as well.
Right. Yeah. So it was placed as you said, like equidistance from each other, both vertically and horizontally. Like I was trying to make it more clean, neat, like crisp kind of thing, but I understand what you said. And what you said, that can be used to make it more vibrant and connected to the spaces behind.
Yeah, I like the continuation of that over the existing building there to the next door to help tie it together.
Yeah, thank you, Malcolm, for making that point, because related to Charles' comments about brick and the structure of sort of evolution of these cities during a time when brick was a very important material in the construction of this country. I come from Chicago, and we were given the mantra of when two bricks come together, that is when architecture happens. So the measurement of a brick is very critical. Your beautiful sort of these flickering pieces could tackle some of the notions of the Kansas City brick. It could flicker like, if you've ever seen the Bertoia sculpture inside of the Saarinen Chapel in MIT, the Saarinen Chapel is a brick building. It's very stout, very massive, heavy. And then inside is this sort of screen mimicking the brick measure. And it flickers the light from an oculus, which I always love this interpretation of materiality and measure to sort of expand the architect's intervention. So even if we can't do fantastical shapes or forms, there are ways that even just synthesizing these very refined movements and moments could be a really beautiful time. So, you know, your project still can sort of have that moment. I'm excited about both of my colleagues' comments about that. But very lively presentation in terms of a thoroughness for the scale. I just wonder, is it kind of dishonoring the notion of the print process and the notion of the value of the printed word to just have a place to print now? You know, would it be, I don't know if you had control over this or if this was a studio mandate by which print means like you got to have a printing facility. If there was an opportunity to study words, study poetry, study, you know, printed material, the power of sort of the political gesture of print.
Right, like yeah, the print shop, like the space was earlier it was a print studio, like the call, and where the newspaper was printed. So we were asked that we'll have a print shop for the local neighborhood communities and people over there, so that they can come in, use that space. We have to like revitalize that old print shop which is not working right now, make it a print shop, and then like ask the people of neighborhood to come in and print those things, so that we also respect the history, but also we have a place for the neighborhood or the people over there, which supports printing and advertising their businesses and all those things. But yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to piggyback on Malcolm and Christina's comment about the potential of the screen, whether you want to use the still element, you know, proportionally having a dialogue with a break. I think a person who does that in another contemporary example is a Kengo Kuma. I think he did a folk art museum in China where there is this kind of idea of a suspended tile. But then I think the question of Christina about the power of the printed word, of the press, and giving voice to this organization, you know, you could also hark back to Ceci tuera cela by Victor Hugo, where, you know, looking at the facade of a building and how words could have been incorporated into your screen system as well, just to make it even more evocative, or, you know. So I think you've created a great system that then can be fine-tuned, enhanced to kind of be more communicative about the activity happening inside, or, you know, advertising, you know, particular events.
Right. Yes.
So we're rounding out. We have 30 seconds left. I don't want to cut anybody off. Any final thoughts?
Good. I really like the saving of that big wall mural and the way you kind of integrated that in. That was really nice.
Okay, great. Thank you, Sam.
Thank you.
And that will bring us to Justin Grimm. Are you ready?
Yes, I am. Let me share my screen quick.
Sure. I'll tell you when it pops up.
All right. My name is Justin Grimm. Thank you for coming to our Manko competition. I really appreciate the professional input. This will be my project. It is named Symbiosis. It is a center for abiotic development and applications, exploring the use of technology, AI, and robots in the fabrication of architecture and in the wider sense of a building after completion. The building itself is located in Venice, Los Angeles, approximately 1/4 mile from Venice Beach. It has a Mediterranean climate with limited rainfall, moderate temperatures, and extremely low humidity. Venice itself is one of the mixed-use districts of Los Angeles, and the site is located at the head of the Venice Canal Complex, which is a recreational canal network constructed in 1905 to serve residential homes in the area. The current context of the site is a mix of modernist homes, businesses, and areas home to multiple tech firms and related unique architecture. Our site is actually two 31 by 100 foot sites that straddle the head of the canal and will be visible for the entire length of the canal. And the building requires a 71-foot occupiable bridge to connect the two sites anywhere along the two buildable sites. We have access from a South Venice Boulevard with parking lot to the east, potential development to the west, and two tree groves to the north, which cannot be touched or developed by our building. So what exactly is a Center for Abiotic Development and Application? We have been commissioned by a technology firm to create a laboratory for developing, assembling, and testing robots to be used in the context of architectural development and maintenance. Robots, such as the ones you see here, will be able to help design, fabricate, assemble, maintain, and inspect architectural components, as well as interact with occupants after construction. Hopefully, we will achieve a sort of symbiosis where man, AI, robots, and nature will coexist for a brighter and more efficient future. And our program is going to include lobby and greeting areas, offices, research lounges, assembly areas, testing areas, and fabrication areas. And to sort of start constructing this building, I quickly identified three main concepts I wanted to pursue. The first of these is to foster a relationship between humans and the robots. So by rejecting the notion that humans, robots, and AI and nature should be viewed as three separate opposing entities, I view that as sort of counterproductive. I see that as technology progresses, one day we'll not be able to tell the difference between all three of those. And that robotics and artificial intelligence will be integrated into our daily lives. And as such, there must be a relationship between all three, and that includes architecture. This facility itself views all the robots and people as equal occupants and designs for all of them. These are some of the ones that will be used in the actual project that I found being used in similar facilities. So we have large robotic arms, aerial robots, aquatic robots, and ones that walk or produce maintenance. So to kind of accommodate all these categories, I used, ramps are prevalent throughout the use of the structure, primarily on the ground level to allow robots and people to essentially walk unobstructed. The use of atriums also satisfy the double height raise requirements of some of the rooms while allowing aerial robots to be transported around the building. With exterior access for drones and vertical circulation for people that is out of the way of circulation paths of the robots. These are concepts that have been present through my entire design process from the very beginning, doing site analysis. I wanted the robots to be able to sort of interact with people and to be able to traverse the entire structure. The building itself contains 3 levels. The first is a sublevel. The sublevel includes computing, storage, aquatic assembly and testing areas with access to the canal, the loading area. This is the test assembly area, the aquatic area. And the purpose of the sublevel is that materials can be brought into the loading area, and with the help of robots and fabrication units, people can design small components which will then be transported to the ground level by mobile robots. This level includes the main entry space, main entry ramp, which is pulled over the canal, giving views of the robots and gradually pull the people into the concave entry. The circulation itself starts outside and you're directed squarely on the main entrance of the building. It includes a reception area with a double-heighted lobby that will serve as a gallery space. As you can see here, the atrium towards the south of the building, the main entrance. It includes a research lounge with a cafe where you can also interact with some of the machines that they're developing there. And it includes a large robotic space. This space is highly visible. It's considered the main area of the building, and it's located over the bridge. It's supported by a PSC box girder bridge with hollow steel section composite bracing. As you see on the bottom, the bracing is fully illuminated. It's visible easily at night and creates an interesting feature that you can see from the entire canal area. It also includes small robot assembly with aerial robot assembly with access to the exterior. You can see the double height space with the roof access hatch and with access to the park behind the structure. The last level is the third level. It is primarily a, so we have the drone control mezzanine and access hatch. And we have office spaces on this level, located above the research lounge. Some are small and cozy and make use of different lighting in this space to create for people to work. And it also uses skylights and views of their robotic assembly areas to create an open, sort of inspiring environment in a relatively small footprint. See here, these are composite louvers that diffuse and direct sunlight down into the main causeway for the offices. And my second concept with this project is to view architecture itself as sort of a passive machine and not just a shelter to house robots and people. I see architecture has become more and more complex as it has evolved, and I see future architecture sort of returning to more simpler, a bit fluid forms with integrated systems. This is where the power of the AI is sort of displayed in the project to become one overall sort of machine that people occupy instead of just the shelter. AI itself, I'm not going to get too far into this, but essentially, if this facility is designing AI and robots, you'll be able to essentially use an AI to control all systems in a building. It can receive input from occupants, temperature sensors, the robots, and the, say, climate history of the site in order to completely control all systems in the building. This includes, say, climate control systems. This is a VFR system that's more efficient than regular HVAC. It could be, you can have input by people, temperature sensors, processed by an AI, and then you will be able to essentially have a building controlling all the systems without being programmed. It could adapt to changing climate, as well as controlling other systems such as the electrochromatic film on windows in order to diffuse light, and robotic safety systems and changing lights. Part of this building is that it's kept very sterile. That is for the protection of the robots. Doing that can be difficult, but this uses ductwork that's integrated into LED lighting panels, as you can see on the top, as well as integrated forced air duct systems, dust collection with certain materials that can be very easy to clean and kind of keep the area sterile and white and clear from any debris. Part of this machine is also the structural system. It relies on a relatively novel structural system using a composite HSS column. It's essentially a steel tube with a higher carbon steel tube in the center with longitudinal risers and a concrete fill. This kind of slims down the walls and the columns, and it gives us a 180-minute fire rating as opposed to the usual 20-minute fire rating for similar columns. It also makes use of delta beams, and delta beams are essentially, as you see this bottom diagram, it's a metal housing that is filled with concrete and then can be tied together with hollow floor slabs. This is a typical hollow core floor plan detail, and this is the system that we're choosing to use. It reduces the floor plate to 13 inches from 24 inches and allows more, say, ductwork or lights, more equipment to be run, and brings a higher ceiling. It also is stronger against earthquakes, and it can be rapidly assembled So my last concept is using the machines as sculpture. Displaying them for the public instead of closing them off and using them as sort of a warehouse is allowed by the use of laminated glass windows with minimal framing and electrochromatic film. This is a system that is used in the Apple Park, although this is on a smaller scale. It uses 1-inch laminated glass that is curved inwards. It allows you to get a very large, tall, and heavy glass panel installed in the building without the use of extensive framework. So it avoids distraction from the robots they'd be seeing inside, especially at night. The windows themselves respond to different site contexts, such as roads, other structures, and the canal itself, and how people would approach the building. The minimal materiality with organic and modern forms also responds to site, but allows controlled visibility without distracting from the robots or the interior. The walls actually consist of a more composite structure. It uses fiberglass, pre-formed fiberglass panels, space loft insulation attached to a steel frame, which is then in turn fastened to a seismic bracing. The void inside is filled with void fill foam insulation that makes the structure more rigid and energy efficient. You see the parts of the assembly. All these components can be mass produced and assembled maybe one day by the robots they are creating in this building. Also, throughout the building, the use of skylights is prevalent. This is used to sort of make the building seem larger than it is. It's a relatively small site for such a facility. It can bring more natural light into the structure. They might seem simple, but they've been engineered with composite frames to achieve energy efficiency and to achieve a way to sort of pull people through the building. So I have in lieu of not having a physical model, I have a short video to show. There's no audio, so feel free to chime in before I go to my board. In all, I see this building becoming an example of how architecture, technology, and people can coexist to create a brighter, more efficient future. When you start to sort of examine the needs of modern technology in architecture and the implications of artificial intelligence and what they can contribute, you begin to understand that such things must and will be integrated into our lives in the future. It's something that I don't think should be feared or hidden from the world. And this proposal, I hope, serves as a testament to that dream. So that is my project. My board is, okay, excuse me. All right, do you have any questions?
Right on time. Thank you, Justin.
Thank you.
Thank you for your presentation, Justin. You are a young man not without imagination, right? There's a completeness and sort of an exuberance for wanting to figure things out, wanting to imagine, and wanting to sort of develop and or extend your imagination into a viability, to willfully make it happen, to willfully extrude the profiles that you would imagine could happen. And someone who's studied, do you know the work of Jürgen Meyer H?
Unfortunately, I do not.
You don't? Okay. I guess it dates me a little because he's my classmate and was one of the first ones in this generation versus the generation in the 60s who is also very preoccupied with sort of using the plasticity of new composite materials and new ways of form making in order to make much more plasticine sort of architectural elements, as well as make concrete also be incredibly much more fluid and dynamic, and be able to structurally make that happen. You might take a look at his work. I love how that you've been very thorough, because that just cannot be denied. And the DARPA dog is one of my children's favorite sort of research project. The idea would be, if you'll, once you're ready to go back to a drawing set, it sort of highlights two things. It sees engineering and research as somehow compatible with the engineering and research that buildings happen to perform. One of the things that I'm learning from my clients is that once they have a lot of research dollars, they're trying to push all these activities into a very, very uncomplicated shell building. They want to not have the research objects and the faux size of the project compete with how much the building will cost. So from an architect's perspective, there seems to be a compatibility of what the future holds inside and what the building is like on the outside. And I find that this is a really difficult discourse to bridge with current clients. What's your take on that sort of issue, Justin?
That I'm so sorry. Take on which one of those?
The idea that when research is pushed, so the activities of what happens inside a building is pushed, then the building budget doesn't coincide necessarily. That there's a idea that buildings ought to be much more maintainable, much more easily fixable, so that more dollars could go towards the objects within it and the intelligence inside of it. And there's a competition. Oftentimes our greatest science is not happening inside the greatest building, right?
Architecture, I think architecture itself works to inspire the people in the buildings. And when I was doing research on the different types of robots, I saw a lot of spaces that were, say, concrete basements, or essentially just sort of shacks. And I realized that these spaces weren't necessarily dirty or beat up, but they were just built with intention of being sort of dirty and beat up. And they just could have been better. I couldn't see myself working on anything like these robots in such a space. And I think for a marginal price increase and with more advanced technology and efficient systems, we can sort of achieve the same sort of facilities and price point in a much more inspiring and interesting sort of location. Does that sort of answer the question?
It gets at sort of your value system, absolutely. Will you go to a final presentation board?
Sure. This one is. Oh,
Recognize it's hard to.
I apologize. I'm still getting used to Zoom. This is the final board. I also have the construction document set.
Got it. Which has a drawing set, quite beautiful.
Justin, a very impressive and polemic presentation. I really appreciate that you are standing by what you are putting forth. How do you see this building being fabricated? It seems to offer a huge potential for pre-panelization, even it being kind of a bridge. I can see part of it being fabricated and kind of bolted on site. Is that part of your concept, you would say?
Yes, I would. I can show you a quick documents here. So the bridge, so the panels on the side, these fiberglass panels are actually preformed offsite. If you ever seen them built, it's the same process that is used in yacht construction. They're produced individually as well as the insulative sheets and the steel. It can be designed completely through digital process, either cut out or fabricated by digital means. Can be shipped to the site, say on semi trucks. Each one of these panels is sized to be able to fit on a truck and be shipped out to the site. And it can be assembled on site with minimal technical know-how. We see that in the facade system, the structural system, and the bridge system is actually made up of the, let me see, I believe they are 7-foot sections of this bridge. So these would be created offsite, then shipped, held into place, and then post-tensioned. So hopefully that drives down the cost a bit more and reduces the time it takes to construct the building and incorporates the technologies that will be used in the actual building when it's used.
Yeah, I think to me that is a strength of your project in that it put forth a vision for architecture in the future of how we might rely on prefabrication and constructing pieces offsite and then kind of attaching it on the actual site. What would you say if I were to compare your building to the City of Art and Science by Santiago Calatrava, which, is very evocative and it's extraordinarily resolved in its own insular way, but yet how would you compare what you have done to that work?
Sure. The City of Arts and Sciences definitely gets the inspiration and neo-futuristic look correct. One reason I'm a fan of Calatrava is that he's also an engineer and thinks of solutions to those problems from an architectural standpoint. But the City of Arts and Sciences also creates a lot of its own demons. It's very extravagant, not necessarily a bad thing, but it creates issues that some of his other projects have, say with structure or energy efficiency. This building works to kind of reduce problems in a more inspiring way. So instead of making everything extravagant and highly visible, it takes what is there to sort of create a more inspiring space. I can show you, say, on my process. Some of these ideas were not, excuse me, some of these ideas were not as inspiring and they were a bit more simplistic in form. There we go. So especially this middle one, obviously not very much like Calatrava's City of Arts and Sciences, but it has the same sort of ideas with the prefab walls, steel structure, and large windows. But in order to develop to the sort of final concept, it doesn't create these large, huge structural elements that I would consider to be, in the grand scheme of things, sort of unnecessary. So it tries to be a more efficient form of what he was creating in the Arts and Sciences Center.
Okay, I would argue that this efficiency does translate in it has an impact on the environment, like you talked about. Like I'm wondering, why is this on Venice Beach, which is not the image that I have when I'm, like whether you're walking along the canal or if you are on street level looking at those. I realize it used to be bungalows, now it's kind of modern construction. But this space that you have created on the left does, I would argue it's a very self-referential, and I'm wondering if its efficiency cannot be conceived as kind of a camouflage for kind of actually a very strong act of urbanism that I think you should be aware of, or you should kind of, it's a, and you know, you are embracing it, and I think that's important because I can see you are passionate about this this approach. So I would say the strength of your project, Justine, is that it is a manifesto of very well integrated systems. I think I'm very impressed by your detail. The shadow gap that incorporate, you know, supply and return grill and LED light. The joinery of your element is admirable. And the tectonic character, even though the shape would tend to want to erase that, but the modularity, I think, is a very compelling. So I think it's a very mature, you know, piece of work. So wanted to congratulate you on that.
Yeah, I would agree. I think I was, yeah, really like how kind of really dove into what the kind of the essence of this project was, and really tried to look at a holistic solution, from whether that's the materiality or the structural system, and even down to the HVAC. I think doing the VRF system is a perfect fit for this type of facility. So I was really yeah, I think it all fit together really well. But I do agree with the whole idea of and the site selection maybe isn't necessarily that's not part of your design solution, but it maybe how it fits into the context of the neighborhood would definitely be a challenge, I would see. But overall, I really like the project.
Thank you.
Yes, I really appreciate my colleagues' thoughts on these, because it gives me a little bit of language to attach to. I love the idea, Charles, that you mentioned. It's a very insular project, meaning inside this logic system, as Charles would say, a manifesto, it's very complete. It's super complete. The point in where one would say, oh, well, we need to extend that laboratory or we need our drone system are now bigger, or they have larger capacity, it can fly higher and faster. And we need to widen that hallway or something. How can it account for sort of changes and or differences, Justin?
Okay. So as for things like widening hallways or changing walls, many of the interior spaces are constructed of these panels of different materials, and these could theoretically be sort of swapped out with ones that are produced. Like, say you need to sort of get rid of these two bathrooms located on the ground level, and you want to extend this ceiling over. You could effectively unbolt or remove these walls and then fabricate another one of these ceiling plates, essentially erase that sort of area. But as for the use of the building, you find like in floor plans and in fabrication spaces, many of the areas are left open. The only defined spaces are storage areas, which are integrated into the walls. I want them to determine where they're going to be placing cables, where they're going to be placing chairs, where they're going to be working. And so for robots to be developed more in these spaces, I was hoping to leave it up to the researchers and give them sort of room to work and expand.
Your timer went off, so
Okay.
any last responses to that, but just want to make sure time is fair for everyone.
Okay. Other spaces such as large robots and drone access, they incorporate larger spaces, and they're also more open to allow them to swap out robots or to accommodate larger or smaller drones.
Okay, sorry for the hard break. Thank you so much, Justin. Let's see, Riley, I believe you're next. Riley Griggs, ready?
Yep.
All right.
Share my screen.
I'll tell you when it pops up and then I'll start your timer.
Are we looking good?
Yours, yep.
We're good to go?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So hello, my name is Riley. Thank you guys so much for being here today. So the site we were given to develop for this project was in Austin, Texas. It rests in close proximity to South Congress Avenue, a major thoroughfare which leads directly into downtown Austin, and then crossing over the Colorado River. So the site has a rather close proximity to downtown. Austin, Texas is currently undergoing rapid growth of its metropolitan area. This has led to a hotly debated topic in Austin concerning where and how to create more residential density blended with commercial spaces inside the city, all while having a sensitivity to the existing neighborhoods. So Austin is working to develop transition zones along major corridors within the city, such as South Congress, in response to this rapid growth. This mid-rise mixed-use development at the corner of 1415 Eva Street, which is our site, strives to offer the community a development true in the sense of a transitional zone between the major commercial district along South Congress to the east, that major thoroughfare, and the residential area to the west. It works to offer the city of Austin with a community-centered commercial space and housing density. So the site itself, again, is rather small. And due to the nature of this project and its location as a class, we decided to take a more developer approach to this project in order to have the most realistic and efficient and complete project possible. I personally have three main goals with this design. The first is to create a modern yet contextual mixed-use mid-rise building, resting between a busy commercial district and a residential neighborhood. And in doing so, connecting and enhancing the surrounding commercial and residential areas. Secondly, to foster community identity by creating a hub for interaction and development. And finally, to provide dynamic and flexible space for the community to grow and expand. The program itself is simple. The ground floor is made up of commercial retail and dining space. The upper three floors are all residential apartments. There's a screen on the southern facade that acts as a permeable skin with the purpose of providing first privacy to the residents as well as sun shading. And finally, circulation and back of house core rests along the back of the building. Moving on to these diagrams, the program itself is broken into 4 separate zones, all working together to create a flexible, inviting experience for the community, starting with the corner cafe on the left, and then the lounge and kitchen space and a flexible entry and lobby, and then finally the retail and storage on the right. The entry space itself is recessed and provides clear passage from the sidewalk at the front of the building to the parking lot at the back, allowing direct access to all the spaces within the ground floor. It can be used for cafe and retail overflow space, or at night, for example, if the retail and space are closed off at that time, it can act as an event space or a small concert space, or really any space the community might need. So to create an even more inviting experience for the community, planters and other natural elements have been pierced through the enclosure, further blurring the lines between interior and exterior. So not literally pierced through, but that's the articulation that I went through. And then the ground floor facade opens up to the sidewalk in many places, shown by the dashed lines on each diagram, pulling people in and allowing the community to flow in and out of the spaces with ease. Certain spaces can also be opened up and closed off during different parts of the day. All right, so the southern facade is made up of movable screens that each give the residents the option to choose where they want privacy and added shading or a clear view out to the community on the southern facade. The screens can roll over the bedroom or the balcony and living room, or a combination of both, depending on the needs of each resident. The ground floor facade has one main entrance, that's that main lobby space, that provides access to all the spaces on the ground floor again. The ground floor itself is an open and flexible floor plan with each space being easily accessible to the next. The moving screens combined with the mullions and shading fins create an ever-changing dynamic facade of overlapping lines and shadows that's shown on that bottom diagram there. This dynamic facade, including those moving screens and identifiable shading fins that extend off the building, work to become a bold, recognizable beacon, providing the community with that identity I was talking about. These fins are angled to allow for sun to hit the facade in the morning time and provide shade as the sun passes over the building in the afternoon in the hot Texas sun. So moving on to, here we can see the east elevation. This elevation helps us to see the buffer zone, which is on the sidewalk, and it's creating a smooth transition from the street. The fins, along with the trees, so them working in combination, help the building to claim and occupy the sidewalk. This further blurs the line between inside and out and helps the pedestrians feel as though they are part of what's happening on the interior. Now looking to the west facade, excuse me. We can see first the vertical circulation bar at the back with the housing the stair cores and the elevator. And then secondly, we can see the stationary screens on the east and west facades covering the series of windows along the apartments. This section helps us to understand that the first floor is all public space with its 4 main zones, and that the top 3 floors, shown here, are all the private spaces, all the apartments on the upper 3 floors. This supporting southern elevation shows many of the main principles and design features previously discussed, such as the articulation of, again, those shading fins and rolling screens. Now, in order to better understand the aesthetic nature and experience of the building, I'm going to move back to the shot of the southern facade here. So the goal was for this building to be a bold, stark, and finely tuned building through elements like those black aluminum finish panels on top and bottom of the building, as well as the series of stark white shade fins and rolling screens. But at the same time, I said, you know, people are going to be living in this building, so I wanted to contrast the bold starkness with soft, more common materials such as wood and brick on the interior, in order that the residents that live there might feel comfortable where they live. All right, so moving to the ground floor here, off to the right, we can see those 4 diagrams reminding us of the main ideas of the ground floor. We can see the vertical circulation stairs and elevator core at the back of the building, allowing those 4 main zones to be prominent and pushed to the front of the building. We can also see the lobby space and its identifiable floor pattern, as well as the buffer zone, sidewalk, and other natural elements reaching inside. So now moving from the ground floor to the renderings here. Firstly, we can see the buffer zone sidewalk view. This shows the building reaching out to meet the pedestrians on the sidewalk, and the interior space bleeding out onto the sidewalk, again blurring those lines and inviting people in. You can see how easy it would be to just slip into the building. Next, we have the cafe view. We can see the lounge space with the drop ceiling, providing a more intimate experience, and the lounge space and kitchen mass acting as a central core that anchors the ground floor. Moving here to the retail entrance, we can see the entrance from the sidewalk with the window walls being rolled back and the retail space overflowing into that flexible main entry space. And you can also see how easy, again, it would be to just slip into the space from the sidewalk as if you were already a part of the interior. This final view here shows the lobby entrance view. Again, we can see the lounge and kitchen central mass being the anchor, connecting us back to the community through an obstructed view through the lounge space out through the cafe there. And moving to the second floor plan shows us that as each resident comes up the stairs or elevator, they will exit into the hallway or lobby space. Each floor has its own lobby space the residents can utilize to connect with neighbors and build relationships. Each floor has its own lobby space that residents can utilize again. And then you see off to the right, you can see that diagram of the southern facade screens on the apartments. And then all the apartments on the top 3 floors are rather identical, but the outside 2 are slightly larger to accommodate bigger families. So I'm not going to show the next 2 floors because they're basically the same thing. Here we can see the apartment view. This is looking from the kitchen and dining room through the living room to the balcony. We can see the screen being moved off to the right and the stationary screens on the left of the image, shading those windows. The section perspective here shows us a cut through the main lobby space on the ground floor, as well as the apartments, all the apartments on the top 3 floors, and the lobby space of each floor. We can see the shading fins again. There's a steel structural system providing an efficient grid for all of the spaces to live within, and the added privacy by the frosted glass, in each bedroom there. Then moving from this finally to this final section of details here. Off to the right, we can see the wall section taken from the southern facade. This parapet detail is showing us multiple custom systems that are integral to this design. Firstly, this system of the shading fins being tied directly back to the structure through first a steel angle connected to a large C-channel, welded to a series of 8-inch steel tubes, welded to a bent plate and back to that main structural girder. Now moving to the moving screens. Screens are placed on roller tracks bolted to the structural vertical mullion system. We can also see both horizontal mullions there as well as the double pane insulated glass. And then this detail is basically a similar detail just happening at the bottom of the building. It's the bottom fin detail. Again, here we can see a similar system with the shading fins being connected all the way back through the C-channel and the tube back to that main structural girder. And moving again, we can see a similar system of the moving screens here being connected back to the vertical mullions. And then finally, this new system here shows the aluminum finish panels connected back to interlocking series of tracks that are connected to the building through the use of Z-clips. And then moving finally to this 3D detail here, it allows us to see things in greater complexity. And then more specifically, we can see the cable tieback system that holds the end of the cantilevering fins. The cables will skip a bay in order that the moving screens will not collide with them as the user moves them back and forth. So the fins are not only connected back to the structure, but also back to the cantilevered back to the vertical mullions. So to wrap this up, I'd like to summarize those 3 goals again of this design. To first create a modern yet contextual mixed-use mid-rise building resting between this busy commercial district along South Congress and the residential neighborhood to the west. And in doing so, connecting and enhancing the surrounding commercial and residential areas. Secondly, to foster a community identity by creating a hub for interaction and development with that bold design. And finally, to provide a dynamic and flexible space for the community to grow and expand. So wrapping this up, I'll go ahead and end on the board like everyone else has, and I can flip back through any of the slides you guys need me to. Thank you so much for listening. Here's the board.
Thank you, Riley. As a Austin rep, I think I should go first. Well, I think your studio project, first of all, sets up the crisis in Austin rather well, that we have, some high density downtown more and more. And we have a series of neighborhoods. Austin was built, it's a series of suburbs that were built around an old city core. And as the city has grown and annexed surrounding land, what used to be a suburb is now part of the downtown or center Austin. And the crisis is that the people who live in those regions refuse to embrace density. So it has been suggested that on those transition zones between, say, Congress and Bolden Creek, we need to focus more and more on what we are calling the missing middle, those hybrid building, which are kind of 4 or 5 story high, where you can go from a 1 or 2 story bungalow to kind of a higher traffic area. So in that sense, I think the project is welcome and necessary. What you are proposing is, I think, well, my first reaction is that it suffers a bit from maybe a developer mentality, and I acknowledge that you have taken that on from the beginning. What I'm alluding to is just the use of different materials to be contextual, but in the process, I think it just dilutes the identity of the building. I'm seeing some brick, end wall and some metal panel, and then you have those, I think you have the sliding screen to create this very dynamic facade. I guess my main comment, first of all, congratulations on on your section, on your exploded axon. I think I do appreciate how the shading system are anchored to the structure and are not going to be rattling every time you open and close the sliding window. I do feel that the horizontal shading device look a bit gimmicky. Maybe at first I thought, well, maybe if they were oriented, perpendicular to where they are, it might function better as it is facing south. But then I was wondering if this could become more three-dimensional. And the example I had in my mind, probably because I work there, is that there is a project, an early foster project in, I think it's in Fréjus, which is a school, a lycée Albert Camus, where the actual brise soleil became, not just a two-dimensional line, but it became kind of more of a pillow, a cloud, as it were, that was kind of connected to the structure. And I thought that might be kind of an interesting precedent for you to look at. I think I like some of the moves in terms of providing porosity between inside and outside. I think the ground floor is pretty well resolved. I do appreciate the communal areas on the upper floors before every family goes to their own house. And yeah, I think overall it's, being here in Austin, I'm, maybe it's a compliment, but it looks like it would fit in pretty well.
Thank you.
I super appreciate sort of the overall sort of completeness of the project. I see a deep proficiency and sort of interest for the wall section and a deeper investigation into moments within the wall section. Is this something that you're experienced in, or is this something that you've developed in the studio?
Didn't have a lot of previous experience coming into this year with it, but we did spend a lot of time developing the wall section as well as the construction details in our class. So
Got it.
It was a big portion of the goal of the studio. So.
Well, applause to your instructor as well and your classmates. There's a sort of willful, I am going to understand every profile in this wall section. And I really find that doing buildings within a city context, those little elements of relief, those little separations, those little sort of design moments are quite critical, because we don't have control over lots of other bigger contextual issues. So I applaud that effort. And I too, I guess 2000 to 2002 was in Austin, just at the time that things were erupting there, and very much noticed the sort of pressures upon the urbanity of things. And I would have loved if not for anything, to just allow yourself the flexibility to develop a couple of different unit types so that you could really readjust or manipulate the structural grid system a little bit. Might you have a skinny unit and a fatter unit? Considering sort of the population type in the medium density zone, in this transitional zone, I think some of our sort of colleagues to the north in Canada and et cetera are developing a mixed residential constituency. So as to sort of provoke different economic classes to live within the same floor plate or within the structure of the building. One might have 20% set aside for certain populations or et cetera, or even students as becoming part of that population of transition, as well as those needing affordable housings. So really taking on housing and the pressures of housing in Austin may have allowed you a little more flexibility into the architectural expression. So the plan pushes itself out into the face and allowing it to sort of express the collision of the diversity of populations that exist in Austin.
Yeah, that would have been a very interesting thing to dive deeper into, definitely.
Yeah, I like a lot of what you've done here. I think the ground floor seems really well developed, kind of how you've worked through that connection to those different spaces, really with the cafe and kind of how it can open up, and just thinking about those different times of the day and different times and how it would kind of adjust as needed to work through with the community and continue that connection to the neighborhood. I do kind of, maybe could you kind of talk about kind of maybe the exploration you went through and kind of how you landed on this structural system?
The structural system being just the steel column and beam system.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we were given a few options as a studio. We were given basically all the same building type, and we had structural steel, basically a very efficient system. We had a glulam and basically a CLT glulam system if we so choose, and then we also had a podium system, so concrete on the bottom and then type 5 on the top.
Yep.
And we all collectively explored all of them, did research on all of them. But this specific building that I was trying to achieve just worked best with the simplicity, the efficiency of the structural steel, and then just the availability of the system itself. Again, coming back to that kind of developer mindset that may or may not have suffered from, but that's the route we went. So does that help at all?
A little bit, yeah. Just kind of wondering kind of why the landing on this the steel frame in particular, that the podium was the one that kind of jumped out to me as being the right fit. I guess just glancing at this, I mean, that stark transition from this open bottom level to these really compartmentalized upper floors, and thinking that along those developer lines, probably do a little cost analysis there and just switching to type 5 up above might have saved a little bit, but with the connection and trying to get those rolling screens and things in there, that might have been a difficult challenge. So just kind of thinking about kind of what process you went through with that. So that helps me a lot. I think, and I'm just going to point it out, I do it a lot. Every time I talk to fourth year, it seems like it's going to happen. I think it's happened on other projects previous to this, and we might see it even after this. You don't need concrete on a roof if you're not going to occupy it. So it's really just metal deck. They put insulation on top of it, and then your roofing membrane, and you're done. So just remember that moving forward.
All right.
Yeah,
Getting into the later afternoon portion, there's about 5 minutes left if anybody had any other thoughts.
Okay, thank you. Yes, there's a lot of podium construction in Austin where you want to achieve very high floor to ceiling on the ground floor, so you can get 14, 15 feet. So you typically see like a concrete slab, and then we easily see 4 or 5 story of like stud frame on top. And so I was, can you talk a little bit about the performance of your building in terms of harnessing cross ventilation, the kind of mechanical system you have been considering?
Yeah, we looked into that a little bit. Again, the purpose of the screens and opening up the ground floor and such was also to let a lot of natural ventilation in, more specifically on the ground floor. So that was a big deal. That wouldn't be an option all year round in Austin, but it was definitely an option in a good portion of the year. But other than that, we just had basic floor slabs with basic HVAC systems running through them. Again, very efficient systems. I don't know if that helps at all, but.
Are you showing vertical chases in your plan? I'm sorry, I didn't have time to take a look more closely at your drawing set. But could you point them out to me?
You want to go back to the
Yeah.
try to find one. There's a view of the second floor.
Okay, yeah, I see a big mechanical closet where I think you would run most of your ducts.
Yeah, it's through the back of that back of house space in the back of the building, that bar in the back.
Right. Okay. What is the nature of the, I think, if I have one more minute, yeah. What is the nature of the partition between the kitchen and that communal lounge area? Like, is that just a fully opaque wall? Is there any kind of opening there? Like, how is that exterior wall being treated?
This wall here.
Yes.
Gotcha. So that wall needed to be, I believe it needed to be fire rated. Other than that, it's just a very basic wall. It was not necessarily structural because the structure comes through the beams and such, but there wasn't a whole lot going on with that wall other than just piercing through it for the openings to the apartments.
Okay.
I don't know if that answered your question or not, but.
Okay. I feel a natural pause. Are everyone okay to move on to the final one? Okay.
Thank you.
Riley. And we're at the last but not least brings us to Justin and Salim. Are you guys ready?
Hi everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're doing the echo thing, so someone might have to mute something.
Yeah, sorry for that. Sorry. Let me share the screen. So I'm gonna mute myself.
It's coming up, and are you gonna make it full screen?
Yeah, just a second. Okay, awesome.
Okay.
Can you guys see that?
Yep, I'll start your timer. It's all yours.
Okay, awesome. Thank you. So our project was similar to the last project, but there were some differences, and I'm going to explain a little bit about it now. Our project was to create a mixed-use building in the South Congress neighborhood of Austin, Texas. Though a mostly low-density area, this neighborhood is close to the center of Austin, and therefore there has been a push towards rezoning much of the neighborhood to allow for higher density buildings. This push has largely been met with some animosity from the community already living in the area. And this rapidly emerging city with its particular community development challenges provided the backdrop and context for our project, which was to design a higher density mixed use building at the intersection of the urban growth. So our main driving force behind this project was creating balance and harmony by creating a connection point between the commercial and residential areas that surround the site. The design seeks to further harmonize with the natural environment via natural ventilation and open circulation spaces that would not require additional mechanical usage. These ideas would take advantage of Austin's warmer climate to create an open central courtyard space that connects the three aspects of the building together. The three aspects we had for our project was residential, commercial, and office space. On a macro level, the building will serve as a connection between the residential homes and the building, commercial buildings around it. It will also do some additional things like create a micro community inside the city of Austin and anticipate the urban extension of the city and relate elements of the program into its surrounding. The last thing we seek to do is to create the micro community. The building will create a community of its occupants with strategic areas of separation and integration, creating a small community within a community, where the different parts dialogue with each other. The design celebrates the differing functions of this mixed-use building by utilizing facades that express these areas. However, the overall design incorporates a common stylistic hierarchy that orders the building into a compositional whole.
So the building also seeks to anticipate the further expansion of more dense buildings in the area while being at home in the current context. It creates a separation from the exterior while simultaneously inviting people to visit the shops by sparking interest and curiosity via its courtyard, which seeks to create a focal point for the local neighborhood. To achieve this, we investigated the possibility of underground parking and contacted the city of Austin about this, where they positively responded.
The building, lastly, we thought to relate elements of the program into its surrounding. As part of the last point, the building also relates to current context by placing elements of the program adjacent to areas around it with similar uses. Because of this, we started with the above ground portion of the building along the main corridor of Elizabeth Street, which relates both to the busy commercial area next to our site, but also to the low density single family homes across the street.
Then we added a wing along the commercial side of the building to create a quieter place for the offices that would still directly interface with both the surrounding commercial spaces as well as the courtyard space adjacent to it. Finally, we sought to create an inside-outside physical connection through strategic permeation of the facade. This was done most obviously through the main outdoor passage that connects the courtyard to the street, and through the large opening in the facade that serves as a connection to the community for the residents. We sought to celebrate the different function of the mixed-use building by designing spaces and facades that express these areas while still keeping a cohesive style. We finally ended up with a form and aesthetical language that is represented in this design.
So during the process, we made various moves to manipulate the current site. The biggest of which was to create underground parking, which not only freed up valuable space for actual people instead of cars, but we were also able to optimize the space by providing the community with a focal point where the community could gather in this kind of courtyard park area. Our building was designed in the area with an uncertain future for development, as it's been rezoned, but there's still a lot of single family housing there. So because of this, we wanted the building to work well with the current context as well as with a potential future increased density. Placing the garage underground allowed us to design open parked space that would be part of the complex that could create and be further developed, or that could not be further developed later. The open space would remain regardless of what happens in the future.
The first floor is commercial space that is made up of a cafe, a gym, and a record store. The outdoor circulation starts immediately at the main entrance, which is essentially a breezeway that passes through the commercial space and enters into an outdoor lobby and eventually the courtyard. Views of the courtyard are designed to spark interest and curiosity to passerby that will encourage people to explore the commercial and courtyard spaces.
So, sorry. The second floor further accents the idea of a village, as there are various outdoor spaces and circulation. Sorry, these are just some of the first floor commercial buildings. So this is the second floor. It further accents the idea of a village, as there are various outdoor spaces and circulation with 2 apartments on each floor. So we sought to create a open community space between them, and we really wanted the buildings to feel like they were detached buildings by themselves, as if they're like in a village. The office is also on that floor, and this is the open community space here. This is the office space, and the 3rd and 4th floors with minor differences are essentially the same. These are some of the apartment spaces.
Okay. In this elevation, the notation of spaces can be seen through the facades. One of the requirements for our design was for it to be a steel construction. So we decided to celebrate this by using a metal as a primary cladding material. And the horizontal seams of the material emphasize the horizontality of the building holistically. The system is a Alicobond 3A composite, which is also a material that benefits the building for many pros that we're gonna explain it later. The brick is used for commercial spaces on the first floor, and we kind of, but by this treatment, we kind of like try to bring up the building into like a human scale. And then we have, yeah, and then we have a metal as a primary cladding material. The first floor and then we have a double skin facades in the office spaces. So then we have a vertical circulations that are highlighted with a metal perforated screen that shield the occupants, but also allow ventilation in the open circulation of the building.
That's our concept of connection. The building not only bridges between programmatic stylistic elements, but also seeks to integrate itself to a more sustainable way of being. Besides allowing for circulation to the unconditioned areas of the building, the office space also uses a double skin facade. However, we sought to make this system more than just a double skin facade. We made the windows and glazing elements operable so that the environment could be changed by the occupants, and therefore it could remain more comfortable for them. by creating a greenhouse effect.
Yeah, I get it. Sorry. So sorry for that. The system works by creating a greenhouse effect in a cavity of two sets of glazing outside of the office facade. Air that is exposed to heat from the sun rises and is ventilated out the top of the facade. When this happens, air pressure will force air through the opposite, cooler side of the facade. The wall with these facades are on the east and the west purposely to gain natural ventilation in the morning from which ever direction that is opposite to the sun. In the morning, the west facade will provide the cooler air ventilation and it will flip in the evenings. Sorry.
So the windows of the double skin facade are fully operable and allow for the occupants to regulate their own spaces. The two sets of glazing are suspended from the facades of the offices by a special rectilinear steel curtain wall that is reinforced by steel connections at critical tie-in points to the structure all the way up the facade.
The complex window system has many important details. The clip assembly ties the glazing to the facade while allowing the minimal thermal breaks in the facade. The telescopic system for opening the windows is operated via electric system, but can be operated by the rotating level if it's necessary. The crossing X-shaped pivot pins allows lateral stability of the double skin system. Then the whole system is connected at the bottom of the glazing panel via a bracket system that takes loads directly to the structural parts of the steel facade via a decking floor system.
So, sorry about that. So the structural details of the facade as a whole look to facilitate the idea of balance and harmony both in their design and in their function. The systems are emblematic of the whole concept and design of a building that can harmonize many different functions as well as balance our daily lives. Thank you.
Thanks, guys. And we're right at about 16 minutes left, so right about half.
Does the staircase benefit from the double skin system as well?
Sorry.
Like, what is that treatment here?
Okay.
Same?
Yeah, so the treatment in the staircase is actually just a perforated metal screen.
Okay.
Sorry, I thought I was muted. So it's not part of the double skin facade. It's actually designed to be on the outside of the building. We wanted to make an inside-outside circulation system that included the stairway.
Yes, I think that's a good idea, not to feel like you are inside the box when you go up and down, but kind of establish a relationship to the outside. So I think some of my comment about the previous project might apply here in terms of the eclectic use of materials. I think your double skin ventilation strategy for the office, it's not inexpensive. But if you are going to be using it there, the question to me would be, why not apply that everywhere? I think for the housing element, I can see that zone being offering a lot of advantages, not only creating a chimney effect and controlling the heat, but also providing impromptu balconies. Like if you look at the work of Lacaton Vassal, which is a kind of a French architecture firm, they have made kind of a career out of adding those veranda-like rooms on the perimeter of a building. And so I think I think from a cost analysis point of view, it might be worthwhile if your client is going to invest into this elaborate system for the office. why not carry it throughout the facade of the building and create maybe more unorthodox living areas? So just wanted to start with that.
Yeah, thanks. I guess the idea, that's a really good idea. And I think the reason we wanted it to be for the office alone was for the offices like facing west and east perfectly. So that's why we were doing that originally, to just allow for that natural ventilation that would happen because of the sun rising and setting. And we also really wanted to use a diverse amount of systems to highlight certain functionality of the space from the street. But what you said is, totally valid and for sure. And yeah, that would be kind of more of an innovative approach. But in terms of cost, yeah, it would be kind of prohibitive, but I guess we kind of went a little bit there anyways.
So again, wonderful and complete in its presentation and sort of your thinking. So I really appreciate both of your efforts in that realm. My question has to do with sort of the architectural lessons that one could take away from this project in terms of making amazing spaces, whether it is housing or offices or, something else. And in that sense, if you'll kind of close in on a second floor plan where the units start to emerge. Yeah. I can imagine that the office constellation of spaces is less encumbered. However, I'm a little perplexed by the floor planning of both of those units, other than there are 2 units of varying sizes. Could you speak to us a little bit about what kind of architectural spaces that are being considered here?
Yeah,
So
you want to go? Go for it.
So the open space actually was meant to create kind of like a micro community between the occupants. So for example, for any events like birthday parties or something like that, or even during the weekends, so they can relax together. So we wanted to create this dynamic relationship between them, but also we offer the possibility to open it to office employers, to the office, so they can have a second place where they can just take a rest for like a breakfast or something like that. So we didn't prohibit the space for the offices, but we kind of like by creating this kind of like a narrowish hallway, we can somehow not encouraging a lot of flow coming through the office to that space. And just in terms of visual connection, that kind of like a filter the 2 spaces without closing it at all.
Right. So I definitely appreciate the sort of insertion of a community space. However, I think a much more mastery over the housing units and the connection between the office to that open community space, the entryway to the glass encased stairwell, as well as the entry into the other exit stair and elevator core. These are such opportunistic moments and connections that really shows the architect's well-considered, dare I say, mastery over the plan, mastery over how to construct space. and I think there's a slight missed opportunity here where things just kind of find themselves deposited somewhere. And, you know, there's not so many opportunities within a confined site like this. I mean, to control those things. So therefore, like, it really has to sing. So that's something that I would certainly sort of take another glance at another point. But having said that, I could also tell on the flip side that this team and maybe also your classmates were heavily invested in the wall system and sort of making sure that those were starting to read with a kind of proficiency, a kind of elegance, what they are. So I do recognize, as you can flip to some of the wall section details, high concentration placed onto that. I wish things like facade and floor plan and space making was also having some of that high degree of attention. Yes. Yeah. Yeah. So there's a real desire and wishful fulfillment of a technicality that's being exposed there. I think the floor plan and facade also needed that kind of expertise, attention. But overall, very thorough project. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we kind of tried to, I guess the idea behind the arrangement of the staircase and the apartments in general was we really wanted to try and see if we could create apartment spaces that didn't feel like a typical apartment building. And part of that was, like, there are plenty of apartments that have exterior or circulation that isn't necessarily like mechanically controlled systems, you know, or inside at all. But we were trying to see what we could do as far as creating like new spaces, like the balconies overlooking like a community space, trying to create this kind of idea of almost like a village where people felt like you could live in an apartment building and feel like you had, like you weren't necessarily attached, and just trying to see like what we could do with that, like practically. And so I guess that was what we basically were wanting to do with that, was just to see how far we could take that and to see how much we could get that kind of feeling from an apartment building. That's just could have been like a pretty normative mid-rise building.
Yeah, could you go back to your presentation board?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, I think that just kind of maybe add to what Christina was saying. So if, like, in your left rendering, now that kind of that change in material right there in plane, I mean, between these two, it's really just a stark transition. It's and really, if you kind of look back at your second floor plan up here, there's some kind of flexible space. We got a pretty generous landing and things outside of that elevator. So even if you just kind of tweaked which run a couple of those risers were on in that stair, and it'd give you the ability just to kind of take that little chunk and just to push it in 4 feet, and just to kind of give a little bit of a transition for those materials to kind of die and really kind of allow the form of those two pieces to kind of really articulate a little bit more on the facade. It would really be kind of refine that kind of attention to what you're kind of doing and relate those plan moves to what's going on in elevation and section as well. So I think just kind of a little bit more refinement there would be really helpful, and just something that comes with more time. I'm sure this was there's a lot to do in this quick moving project from just a pure workload standpoint. I do like the exploration of the parking and getting that push down and really, I mean, even reaching out to the city and taking that due diligence and trying to kind of push beyond what may be kind of their normal planning approach to projects, and trying to kind of get to that, pushing that beyond what may be normal there. As far as your structural system, and that you talked about it as kind of a requirement of being steel, did kind of the feedback that you got, or kind of how the review process go with kind of the different articulations of your form, and kind of how you kind of make those happen within that steel structural system? So I'm just thinking the balconies on the one corner, there's no column there, the giant hole in the middle, kind of how you're accommodating kind of your diagonal bracing and those sorts of things throughout your project.
That's a good question. We thought about that, and for the balcony, actually, because we have like a system, VRF system for the MEP, that allows us to have somehow like a structural flooring that is thin, but we had this opportunity to expand and allow more dimensional beams that can support that overhangs. So I hope I responded to the question. So we didn't have a lot of duct works. We didn't have a really, I mean, the space that meant to accommodate all this duct work was used for for more structural part.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments, or we're rounding out our time? Alrighty. Okay, thanks to all 5 presentations. Good work, really appreciate it. I'm gonna try to make some breakout rooms real quick, and I'll put Charles and Christina and Malcolm, hopefully I'll get you into a room here within a minute, and then I'll put everyone else in a room, so we'll leave this broadcast going kind of blank for the next few minutes. And then the plan is to reconvene back here at 5 for y'all's comments and announcement. So let me work on the Zoom in here.
I want to thank all the students. Great job in your presentations. That was really good. Really appreciate efforts, and thank you to you, the faculty. We're very fortunate to have some fantastic faculty here at K-State, and great students, great faculty, great work, and thanks for the jury. Those are some really great comments. I really enjoyed listening to that. So we'll see you all at 5.
Okay. What's going on?
Grant, I think if you just close all the rooms and we'll
Okay.
hopefully bring everyone back.
I was just staring at that button. I guess that's the button, but I wish it was a little clearer. All right, I think people will start to fill in. What's that thing? Oh. I think we're getting everyone. It looks to me like everyone's back on the call and the jury has made the decision, and faculty and Matt, I told them they have freedom about the comments and anything they want to add to it other than the announcement. So I'll give the jurors the floor now.
Great.
So the agenda for our little presentation here is to make a round robin comment in general about the 5 amazing projects. And then we'll do a number 2 and we'll have a round robin of comments about that. And then we'll announce the big winner and a little comment of round robin about that. So thank you. Charles, do you want to start us off?
Well, thank you very much for the invitation to participate in this jury and for the opportunity to see the work of your 4th year student. I think as a jury, we were very impressed by the wide variety of approaches and programs, which I think really speaks to the depth and the quality of your faculty. And I think the range of project scale, size was very refreshing. And I thought it would be very hard to compare, different project types. But I think some qualities did come through when we looked at all of the projects. So we had, we were very impressed overall by how articulate the students were, how of good quality the drawings, both the technical drawings and the presentation. And we were very encouraged that in this age of COVID, you, the students, were able to produce that much and with so much passion and interest. So I just wanted to start with that.
Malcolm, do you want to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I think just overall, I was really impressed with the quality of the presentations. I think just kind of how you can, it seemed very fluid and comfortable, and maybe that's just from the semester of practicing with that, with different desk crits and things. But I think it's a much different environment or setting than normal. And I think if you can come across that articulate and professional in this setting, it's going to make it much easier moving forward in in-person settings. So kudos to that for working through. Yeah, I think just kind of similar to Charles, I think we were just really happy with the development across the board from the semester of work.
So my general comment is thank you for this very privileged view, a cross-section of the fourth year of the architecture program at Kansas State. I think it speaks volumes of the talent, both at the student level and at the faculty level, to produce this level of work under this context. Because like my colleagues have stated, it's unprecedented, it's trying, it's unusual at the very least, and certainly always awkward. So bravo, you've managed to bridge all those tremendous things. Your presentations came across visually and verbally incredibly well, which speaks to just the trials of studio and the practicing that's undergone throughout the semester. So I'm deeply delighted and honored to sit on this side of the Zoom room to have that view of the work. Having said that, I also wanted to acknowledge that there's such a deep technical competency and desire that came across in the drawings and in the presentation. So for me personally, architecture starts with a conception for how it comes together constructionally and a deep love and respect for that craft. And you know what I see in everyone's drawings is not only sort of the larger spectrum of interest for beautiful spaces, but then how do we bring some of the thinking back to the level that we can communicate with those who work with us to bring a building to be? So I was deeply moved by those set of drawings there and presentation pieces. It would be wonderful if then the drum roll of the second place. I'll start off with that, and if Malcolm will, after our little round robin, go into the first place announcement, we'll do the roundup. Drum roll, please. The second place project, I believe, is the checkerboard facade project of Riley's. Am I correct? Yes, awesome. Applause, applause, applause. And we've chosen that project because there is such a wonderful and a real sensitivity placed to the way in which the ground floor and how the public interact with the entire sort of building complex. There was a mastery and concern for how people move through the entire building, a floor plan, as well as a deep interest in how things are connected within the building. So deep congrats, my colleague.
We liked the porosity of the ground floor, how that was handled with great mastery, and even including the social lounge area on the upper floor. And we were impressed by the development of the wall section and you know, the amount of research and integration that took place. So we felt that it was good to recognize a housing project, not just because it is in Austin, but also because it tackles some important issues of collective housing.
Yeah, just even the development into those details and with how the different, I mean, you often get a complicated idea of this kind of rolling screen, and even kind of getting into the track and how that was going to be integrated and how it kind of missed the structure and worked together with everything else. I think that was nice level of development with something that could be considered pretty complicated. So with that, we'll move on. So the first place winner is Justin, presentation 3. We really were just excited by the level of development just overall with the project. So really just completely kind of engrossed in what that kind of program could be, and developing everything kind of around that kind of central idea. So whether that's the tailoring of the structural system to the type of HVAC system that was used, and the facade itself. So, congrats.
And I will say, Justin, just amazingly tenacious and fascinated. I could tell that you were each day very fascinated with finding more things to design within this complete world of Justin. And really bringing attention and care. Oftentimes people are saying in this presentation style of today, it's hard to care or craft within the digital space, but I really feel like you crafted this project into being, sort of in a way that you designed yourself into the space and were immensely fascinated the whole time as you rounded each corner or rounded every aspect of this project. So the verve that you've expressed, not only in all of the graphic array of presentation styles, they were represented by the attention and the care that you put into each facet of this project. Everything from the floor plan, elevation, section, site condition, detailing of the cross section, as well as the detailing of all the profiles of this project. So most excellent, congrats.
Justin, from my end, what impressed me the most was for young architects, both in school and who start their career, typically when you go from a design to a detail, you go to the suites catalog and you pick from a list and you kind of try to integrate that into your project. I was very impressed that you didn't take that route, or it was very fleshed out, it was very original, and I really get the sense that you crafted an idea about constructability. So that's very rare in a fourth year student. So hearty congratulations.
Well, yeah, congratulations, Justin and Riley. Excellent projects. And I'm glad I wasn't the jury, because that was a difficult decision. And props to everybody for some really just spectacular work. What a great Friday afternoon to see such good projects. And I want to thank Charles and Christina and Malcolm for spending the afternoon with us. And it was just some fantastic criticism and great work. And thank you so much. And thank you to Grant for coordinating this year. Great job. And thanks to the other faculty for just stellar work with the students. And thanks to all the students that for the projects, even though you might not have presented today. I was able to watch a lot of the reviews on Monday, I guess it was, and it was impressive work. So congrats to everybody.
Thank you to everyone. I'm going to go ahead and end the live stream now. And if the jurors and
Hey, Grant, are you going to unveil who taught
oh, yeah,
the studios?
I'm sure we can do that now. Yep. I go ahead, Genevieve. Start us off. I'll give the reveal.
Well, I'm going to totally take credit for Justin because he was my student. So I did the robot facility. Thank you all. That's awesome. Wonderful comments from everybody.
Cameron?
Congratulations.
Bo Constant was my student, and our studio took on the Aquatic Center for the City of Manhattan. Within the next 5 years, they're probably going to be looking to hire an architecture firm to flush out what type of facility they could do. So I know the Parks and Rec department's been really excited working with our studio just to see what possibilities on multiple different sites in Manhattan. So.
And Greg and Elvis?
Sure, yeah. So we had the pleasure and the privilege to work with SOM this semester, developing the Living Archive project for the Kansas City Call.
And I was infatuated with the sort of mid-rise mixed use in Austin from my time in Texas. So both of those sections were mine, the summer and the fall. And great work, everyone. And I will end the broadcast. And if the jurors and faculty want to hang on, if you have any questions or anything, we can, the students can go take some well-deserved, well-earned time off.
Yeah, have a great